Hello there. This is a Shobu stone, and I have a diamond sharpening curve, DMT. That's what I use for a slurry. And this is my father-in-law's Boker, SS St. Louis. And today what I'm going to do is kind of demonstrate a touch-up. And before we get started, well, while we're getting started, I see a lot of posts on forums, YouTube, Facebook, where people say stuff like, well, I take my 12K or my JNAD or my conical or whatever, and I put water on it, and this is basic what I mean, and what I read rather. I put water on it and I do 15 laps, and you know, the Razor's good. Never had that happen. I've never been able to do that with any stone that I own. If I try to do that with like 15 laps, the Razor will be almost as dull as it was before I started. So this is my method, and what I do is I raised a light slurry on this stone, something that would be kind of misty, nothing big. The thicker your slurry, the more it degrades your edge. You use thicker slurries to take heavy scratches and stuff like that from like a 1K stone, or this is what I do anyway, off of the edge, and then I begin to dilute the slurry, and so that it produces a smoother and finer edge as I go. And I hold this stone, let me move that water. I hold this stone in my hand, and I just start what would be kind of a misty slurry. No pressure except what pressure is required to keep the edge in full contact with the stone. The more pressure, someone described it to me before, and it has to do with how the stone breaks down when you slurry it. But the more pressure you have, the more pressure you put on a stone, the more damage you're going to get to the edge when you're in a finishing stage. Don't ask me to explain it. Somebody like Caleb McCullough could tell you very easily. I just know the results I get when I try that are not good. Now what I do is I'll usually do about 40 to 60 turns like this. Today we're going to choose 40, and that's just an arbitrary number. All I'm trying to do is refine this edge again and try to, and I'm going to add a little more water now, and try to get rid of any kind of little micro damage or anything that might be on the edge with that lighter slurry. And then I'm going to dilute until it gets really misty, even more misty. Again, only pressure used is enough to keep the edge in full contact with the stone at all times. That's 20. And all I'm doing is just diluting this a little bit. So the edge gets refined a little bit more as you go. One more dilution. We're almost at clear water here anyway. And then what I will do is I'll rinse this stone. A lot of times I don't do this stuff. A lot of times I just stop right there. But I'll rinse this stone clean. Rinse the razor and dry it off with a towel. And all I'm doing, I'm not trying to get the razor dry. I just want to get any kind of slurry or anything that was on this blade off, because I want to go to clean water. And I'll do about 20 laps, very, very lightly. It's easy and slowly. And like I said, I don't always do this. Most of the time, I find that that light slurry does just fine. Now what I normally do is I'll strop this razor up, and it just depends on my mood. Sometimes I'll give it like 60 on the linen and 120 on leather, or 75 linen and 150 on leather. Well, this one will probably get 75, 150 because it is not a full hollow grind. I don't know what you call that, but it's definitely not full hollow. Half hollow or some such, I don't know. I don't worry too much about it that often. But what I'll do is I will strop this up, and I may even do like 7 laps on paste. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just depends on my mood and what I'm thinking about the edge and stuff like that. But that's pretty much what I do. We'll be back in a little bit after this dropping, maybe. And I will try to show you a hanging hair test. I don't know if that's going to show up on this camera or not, but we shall see. All right, God bless you. All right, we're back. What I did, exactly what I did. I came off the Shobu, removed the tape, clean the residue off the razor, just run it under water and wipe it with a towel. Then I did 9 laps on Crocs. Now, understand, that's just an arbitrary number that I picked in my head. I ran across the strop, and at 9, I said, okay, that's good. Honing is personal. You might have a very different way of doing things or find a very different way of doing things. All of the honing videos that you see on the internet and stuff like that, all the honing instructions that you're going to see, you're going to find as you get into honing that you're going to find things that work better for you and the way that you hone, and things that don't, and they'll be different from me or anybody else is trying to tell you how to hone. So when you look at videos like mine or anybody else's, I don't care who they are, it's a general guideline to get you started on something, and you will make a final decision as you hone, and it will change over time too, what you do. So I started off with Crocs. I stopped using Crocs for about a year, and now every now and then I use it. Depends on the grind of the razor, depends on what I feel under my thumb when I get done honing a razor. You know, I might strop one up, and it might pass a hanging hair test beautifully, and then it just doesn't feel right under my thumb. I want a little bit more sharpness, and I'll go back to Crocs and do it over again. That's what I did here. I did 75 laps on leather on cloth first, 150 on leather, and did a hanging hair test, and it was flinging hanging hairs all over the place, just cutting them like crazy. But when I ran my thumb along the edge, I just didn't like it. Wasn't, to me, it didn't feel, and that's something you'll have to understand is it's going to come to feel, and I use the edge of my thumb like you would on a knife. Some guys use other tests. It's what you like. Just stay away from the thumbnail test on a finisher. To stay away from a thumbnail test after the 1K. Don't use it, because it'll destroy your edge and you'll be in trouble. But the thumb pad test is what I use, and if the razor just then I'll go back, and that's what I did. I went back, did 9 passes on Crocs, chromium oxide, a pasted strop, lightly pasted, and then I did 60 on cloth and 120 on leather. And when I say these pass numbers, they're exactly what I did. There's guys on YouTube that, well, you follow that with about 100 laps here or whatever, and you watch a guy and he does close to 200, actually, when you count it. So this is not no approximate stuff. This is what I do. 60 laps on the cloth and 120. What I do is whatever I do on the cloth, I double on the leather. But they're not super fast passes, and they're not real slow passes. They are, when I strop a razor, the pass is just slow enough that I know for certain the entire edge of that razor is getting stropped. I don't go any slower than that, and I don't go any faster than that. So, all right, so I've got some hair here. Now, keep in mind, you could do like 20 or 30 passes on Crocs instead of going back to a stone. That'll work for most of the time. But chromium oxide tends to give a really harsh edge if you use a lot of it, for me. So all I do with a chrome oxide is to kind of push the edge up in keenness just a little bit. I rarely ever go past about 7 or 8 passes, 9, 10 at the most. And that's it, because I don't want that harshness from the chrome oxide. I just want to push the edge a little bit. So, wife's hair. Split it. There we go. Let me see if I can find another hair. But obviously, even if I weren't to do that, I'm so daggone blind, can't see anything. But obviously, even if I weren't going back to another hair, you can obviously see it's cutting. Slicing those hairs nice and cleanly. So this razor's ready to go. Lovely. And my father-in-law's Boker rides again. So that is a touch-up on a Shobu. If I touched up on a Kadi, it would be fairly similar, but on a Kadi, I may only just use clean water. Just depends. If I touched up on lapping film, it would be 30, 40 laps at the most, just enough to where I feel like the razor and it is sharp enough. It's been refreshed. And that's the thing, you know, some guy might say, well, 40 laps on chrome or on lapping film, man, I do 10 or 15 or 12 or whatever. Well, good for you. I mean, it just depends on the person that's doing it. I've never had any success with that with lapping film, and lapping film cuts pretty good. It cuts just as nice as a lot of the stones out there, a lot of the synthetic stones and stuff. So, I mean, I've never had that kind of luck. I've always had to do a little bit more. But I always get edges that, you know, I don't have to go back to the stone and go, you know, it's not like, well, I've tried to refresh the razor and didn't work, you know. I do enough that I know that the razor is going to be sharp and I ain't going to have to fool with it for a few more months. That's the deal. So that's been how I do it. That's a starting point or a jumping off point for those of you that are learning so that you can find your own way, because that's what honing's all about. All right. God bless you. I'll talk to you later.